All right, let's talk about one of the most just absolutely jaw-dropping moments in all of sports history. Seriously, this is a moment that didn't just decide a championship, it completely shattered a myth and totally redefined what we thought was possible inside a boxing ring. This is the story of how the impossible actually happened. Just look at that number, 42 to 1. I want you to really think about that for a second. Imagine showing up for the biggest moment of your entire life with those kinds of odds stacked against you. For every single dollar someone bet on you to win, 42 were being bet on you to lose. These weren't just odds. This was basically the world telling you, you have no chance. And we're not talking about just any champion here. This was Mike Tyson, the undisputed, undefeated heavyweight king of the world. A guy who didn't just beat his opponents, he terrified them. He psychologically dismantled them, often before the first bell even rang. So yeah, those odds, they just confirmed what everyone on the planet already believed. This fight was over before it even started. So, how did it happen? How did a fight in Tokyo that was supposed to be nothing more than a simple warm-up for Tyson turn into the single greatest upset of the century? Well, that is the big question, and that's exactly what we're going to break down right now.
See, to really get the sheer shock of it all, you first have to understand the myth. And back in the late 1980s, there was no bigger, more terrifying myth in all of sports than Iron Mike Tyson. The guy was more than just a boxer. He was like a full-blown cultural phenomenon.
I mean, the stats behind his dominance were just insane. He was the youngest heavyweight champ in history at just 20 years old. By 1990, his record was a perfect 37-0, with 33 of those wins by knockout. He held all the major belts, the WBA, WBC, and IBF. But honestly, his greatest weapon wasn't even his punch. It was that aura of pure invincibility. Most guys were beaten before they ever stepped through the ropes. But here's the thing nobody really saw or maybe wanted to see. While the world saw this indestructible titan, the man himself, well, he was getting distracted. There was personal turmoil, legal issues, and his lifestyle was becoming, let's just say, less disciplined. That laser focus that made him so scary, it was starting to fade. The whole machine was starting to rust from the inside. Okay, so now let's flip over to the other side of the ring. Enter James Buster Douglas. Now, he was a talented fighter, no doubt about it, but he had this reputation for being, well, inconsistent, for not showing up in the really big moments. To everyone, he was pretty much the perfect, non-threatening opponent for Tyson. An easy payday. And this tale of the tape pretty much says it all, doesn't it? On one side, you've got Tyson, undefeated, the baddest man on the planet. And on the other, you have Douglas, with 4 losses and a draw, and this nasty label as a talented fighter who just didn't have the mental toughness. People literally called him a quitter. On paper, this was a complete and total mismatch. But, and this is the crucial part, what the odds and all the experts could never ever measure was what was going on inside Buster Douglas's heart. Just 23 days before this fight, his mother, Lula Pearl, passed away. Now that kind of devastating loss, on top of his girlfriend's own serious health problems, it didn't break him. It did the opposite. It forged him into a totally different kind of fighter, someone with a motivation so deep, it went way beyond any championship belt. So now you have these two fighters, and they're heading to Tokyo on completely opposite paths. One guy is distracted, overconfident, and just not taking it seriously. The other guy is quietly focused, steeled by grief, and fueled by this incredibly powerful personal mission. This, right here, is where the perfect storm for an historic upset starts brewing. And you can see that massive contrast in everything about their prep. For Tyson, this was just a tune-up, a contractual obligation. His training was sloppy, he was distracted, and he even showed up in Japan overweight. Meanwhile, Douglas was the exact opposite. He was calm, unintimidated, he had one of the best training camps of his entire life and arrived in peak physical condition, driven by tragedy and a need to create a real legacy for himself. Okay, the stage is set, the bell rings, and literally everyone on Earth is expecting another quick, brutal knockout from Tyson. But what they got instead was something else entirely. They got a masterclass in heart and strategy that would play out over 10 of the most dramatic rounds in boxing history. The fight itself was like a movie, really. It played out in 4 acts. Act 1, the jab. Douglas uses his size and his reach to just completely control the early rounds, frustrating Tyson and swelling his eyes shut. Act 2, the knockdown. Then in the 8th round, Tyson lands this monster uppercut, and it looks like, okay, here it is, the inevitable just happened. Act 3, the controversy. But Douglas gets up, helped by a very, very slow count from the ref, and he survives the round. And then, Act 4, the knockout. In the 10th round, a recharged Douglas stuns a tired Tyson with a flurry of punches and puts him on the canvas for the first and only time he would ever be counted out in his career. And with those words echoing through a completely stunned Tokyo Dome, the impossible became real. The entire world just watched in utter disbelief as the unbeatable champion was on his hands and knees, fumbling for his mouthpiece. His reign was over. Just like that. You know, that one single night in Tokyo didn't just decide a boxing match. It fundamentally changed the lives of two men and the entire sport of boxing forever. The shockwaves were immediate, and they were absolutely massive. Just look at how their paths split right after that moment. For Tyson, that aura of invincibility was gone, shattered. He wasn't the monster anymore. He was human, a flawed titan. The fear factor was gone. And for Douglas, he had this brief, glorious 8-month reign as champion. He'd become known as a one-hit wonder, sure, but more importantly, he became the ultimate symbol of the impossible dream. When you look at the bigger picture, this fight's impact went way beyond just those two guys. It brought unpredictability back to boxing in a huge way. It became this powerful cautionary tale about what happens when talent isn't backed up by discipline and hard work. And really, it created the gold standard, the ultimate benchmark for every single Cinderella story in sports that came after it. And that kind of leaves us with this one last thought to chew on. Moments like this, they remind us that sports aren't just about who's stronger or who's faster. They're about heart, they're about strategy, and they're about the unwavering belief that on any given day, against any odds, the impossible can happen. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most important story sports can ever tell us.